Afternoon then, year 5, and welcome to today's English lesson. So today our LO is to show emotion through drama, because we'll be doing a little bit of drama work later on. And today's date is Wednesday the 24th of February. Now, just before we begin, we're going to do quite a bit of reading today, so similar to yesterday. So just follow along with me, read it with yourselves, make sure you're taking everything in. So remember, in the last lesson, we had Odysseus finally met his wife Penelope. Obviously, Penelope only saw him as the beggar, the old man. So hopefully, we'll see. Maybe we'll see if Penelope recognizes Odysseus and they become properly reunited. So that's what we're going to find out now. So, chapter 12, setting the trap. Odysseus looked up and saw his wife. He saw his wife for the first time in 19 years. His heart soared for joy, but he bit his lip, swallowed, and said nothing. He got to his feet and followed her up the stairs to her bedchamber. "Old man," she said, "old man, sit down. I would like to speak with you. I have heard about you from my faithful swineherd Amos. He tells me that you have heard rumors that my husband, Odysseus, is on his way home, with chests filled with treasure." The old beggar shook his head. "Rumors, madam, nothing but rumors." "I have heard nothing but rumors for 19 long years," Penelope said. "Now the time has come for me to choose a new husband and bid farewell for ever to these walls that welcomed me as a wife all of those years ago." The old beggar sighed. "Madam, I can see your sorrows match my own, but tell me, which one of these wretched suitors will you choose, and how will you choose him?" "Old man, I have been thinking about it all day, and I have a plan. Years ago, before he went to fight in distant Troy, my husband's favourite sport was archery. Sweet Odysseus would take his bow, which still hangs from a wooden peg on the wall of the feasting hall, and he would draw a bowstring across it. The 12 axes would be set in a row the length of the feasting hall. 12 ceremonial axes, one behind the other, with their blades to the ground, their handles pointing upwards, and the rings of their handles in a row. When everything had been made ready, Odysseus, I can see him now as though it was yesterday, would take an arrow and fit it into the bowstring. He would draw the bowstring back and loose the arrow through the rings of all 12 ceremonial axe handles. Nobody could match him. I will set the suitors the same task, and whoever comes closest to Odysseus in skill, I will take as my new husband. But, old man, it wasn't to pour my heart out to you that I invited you up here this evening. I have had a dream, and often you travelling people are skilled at reading such things." "Then, madam, tell me your dream," the old beggar said to Penelope. "In my dream I kept a flock of fat white geese. I kept them in my husband's hall, and every day I fed them with my own hands. Then, in my dream, an eagle swooped down from the mountains, flew through the door of the hall, slaughtered all of the fat white geese, then sat on a rafter and sang." The old beggar chuckled. "Madam, that dream is easily understood. The geese are the suitors who feast in your husband's hall. The eagle is Odysseus, and one day he will return and kill all of them." "Yes, yes, yes, old man, I know that, but dreams come to us through two gates, either through a gate of ivory or through a gate of horn. Those dreams that come to us through the curved and decorated gate of ivory are mere fantasies, but the dreams that come to us through the burnished gate of horn carry the truth. Which gate did my dream come through, old man?" And there's a picture of Odysseus and Penelope there. Recognized it. Oh dear, no, sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to have to read this page for you. I just forgot to add this one in. So, the old beggar looked at the floor between his feet. "I wish I knew," he said. "I wish I knew." Penelope sighed. "So do I." Then she turned and called over her shoulder, "Eurycella, Eurycella." The door opened and an ancient servant hobbled into the room. Odysseus recognized her instantly. Eurycella had been his nursemaid. She had suckled him when he was a baby and looked after him when he was a child. "Eurycella," Penelope said, "take this old beggar, wash his feet, and give him a new woolen cloak for his shoulders." The old woman beckoned to Odysseus. "Old man, come with me, come with me." The beggar got up to his feet and followed her. She led the beggar out of the bedchamber, and she showed him a bench where he could sit. She fetched a bowl of steaming water. She took off his sandals, and she washed his feet. She washed his ankles. She washed his calves. She washed his knees. Then, suddenly, the old woman stopped. She stared in astonishment. Up the inside of the old beggar's thighs she had seen a scar, a jagged scar. She'd recognized it instantly as a scar that Odysseus had received from the tusk of a wild boar when he was a boy. She looked up into the old beggar's face. "It's you." You are home at last. The old beggar reached down and pressed his hands over her mouth. Shh, woman. If you love me, hold your tongue. Say nothing. The old nursemaid nodded, her wrinkled face beaming with delight. She hobbled off, fetched a warm woolen cloak, and gave it to the old beggar. He threw it over his shoulder and he winked at Eurycella. She smiled fondly back at him. Odysseus made his way downstairs to the dark, silent feasting hall. He saw Telemachus sitting alone. He whispered, My son, come here. Listen to me and do exactly what I tell you. Take all the weapons that are hanging from the walls and hide them in a locked chamber. If anybody asks you where they are, tell them that they've become tarnished and smoke blackened and they've gone to be cleaned and sharpened. Leave only my own bow hanging from its wooden peg and the 12 ceremonial axes. Then, when everything is ready, hide a bow for yourself among the shadows by the door, and also hide 2 quivers full of arrows, 2 swords, and 2 bronze-tipped spears. Then go to old Eurycella. She alone had recognized me and knows all of my secrets. Tell her tomorrow when I signal her, she is to make her way out of the feasting hall and she is to lock all of the doors from the outside. Straight away, Telemachus set off to work. Odysseus went outside. He lay down on some soft grass under the countless stars. He wrapped himself in his warm woolen cloak, whispered a prayer to the owl-eyed Athene, closed his eyes, and fell into the sweet, oblivious balm of sleep. So Odysseus looks like he is beginning to set a trap then to these suitors, killing them all and fulfilling Penelope's dream. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the next chapter then, and then you need to be focusing on this because this is where your drama is going to be coming into play. So chapter 13, Springing the Trap. Odysseus woken by the sun shining onto his face. Already the suitors were gathered, feasting and drinking. He got up to his feet and made his way to the hall. He stepped onto the threshold stone, lifted the latch and pushed the door open. He went from table to table, his arms outstretched, begging for food. One of the suitors said, Look, the old beggar is back. Old man, come here, he said. Have some wine. He offered a cup of wine. The beggar walked over, but as he reached to take it, the suitor drew back his hand and tipped the wine over the old man's head. Old man, have a piece of meat, said another suitor. He picked up the shin bone of an ox and hurled it at the beggar, striking him on the forehead so that the red blood trickled down with the red wine. All the suitors threw back their heads and bellowed with laughter, but then, suddenly, their laughter stopped. Penelope was coming down the stairs from her bedchamber. She was dressed in bright silks, with her hair hanging loose over her shoulders. Old Eurycella was hobbling down behind her. When Penelope reached the bottom of the stairs, she stopped and turned to the suitors. For years you have fastened on my husband's hall as your place of perpetual feasting. Your excuse has always been that you want to win my hand in marriage, and now the time has come for me to put you to the test. She reached across and took the bow from its wooden peg on the wall. Whoever comes closest to matching my husband in skill, whoever can draw a string across this bow and loose an arrow through the rings of 12 ceremonial axe handles, he will be the one I take as a new husband. The time has come for me to bid farewell forever to these walls that welcomed me as a wife all of those years ago. Penelope turned and nodded to Eurycella. Apologies about that. Okay, so Penelope turned and nodded to Eurycella. Straight away, the old woman set to work. She took the 12 axes from the wall. She set them one behind the other, the blades to the ground, the handles pointing upwards, the rings in a row, just as she remembered Odysseus doing it all of those years before. When everything was ready, Penelope turned to the suitors again. Now, which one of you is man enough to win me? There was a great hubbub and discussion among the suitors then as to who should go first. They decided to take turns following the direction that the wine jug took when it was passed from hand to hand. The first to try was called Laodus. He took the bow in his fat white hands, swollen from months of feasting. He set the foot of the bow on the floor at his feet. He began to try and bend it. It sprang out of his hand and clattered down onto the ground. A second suitor tried and fared no better. Each of them in turn tried to string the bow, and not one of them could do it. So some came closer than others, but not one of them succeeded. So they warmed the bow in front of the fire, and they rubbed beeswax into the wood to make it more supple. Each of them tried again, and still not one of them could string the bow. Penelope stood with her arms folded, and she watched. She shook her head. Perhaps the day is not a lucky one, she said. Perhaps the day is not auspicious. She turned and made her way back up the stairs, Eurycella following, followed, hobbling up slowly behind. As the old nursemaid climbed the stairs, the beggar, sitting among the shadows by the door, caught her eye. He winked and nodded. Eurychella smiled. As soon as she was out of sight, she made her way out of the hall by a back way. She hurried round to the threshold stone, and she pulled the bolts across the doors, locking them firmly from the outside. Inside the hall there was silence, broken at last by Antinous. It's not so much losing the woman I mind. She's pretty enough, I grant you, but there are plenty of other fish in the sea. No, it's making ourselves seem such weaklings beside the memory of that cursed Odysseus. The other suitors nodded and spat on the ground. Then a voice came echoing from the shadows by the door. I was an archer once in the days of my youth. Antinous turned, looked back at the old beggar. He lifted his lip in a sneering smile. You might have been an archer once, but you are nobody. The beggar continued. I was an archer in the days of my youth, and I wonder if there is still strength enough in these old, weather-beaten arms to draw a string across that bow. The suitors threw back their heads and laughed. A hail of bones and broken crockery flew across the feasting hall. But then Telemachus got up to his feet and raised his hand. Enough, he said, enough. Antinous, are you afraid that this old beggar will put you to shame? He smiled at the old beggar. Old man, show us what you can do. He gave the bow to the old beggar. Odysseus felt the smooth, familiar wood against his hands for the first time in 19 years. And here he is then, about to fire his arrow. He set the foot of the bow on the floor at his feet. Slowly, taking his time, he began to bend it. Slowly, he drew the string across it, and then, with one finger, as though he was playing the string of a lyre, he plucked the bowstring. It gave a beautiful, clear note, like a swallow's song. From high above the roof of the feasting hall there came an answering rumble of thunder. The suitors sat and they stared. Then the old beggar took an arrow and he fitted it to the bowstring. He drew the bowstring back and loosed the arrow. It flew clean through the rings of the 12 ceremonial axes, handles, and lodged quivering in the wall beyond. The suitors gaped goggle-eyed. The old beggar smiled. That match is played and won. Now for the second. He took another arrow, fitted it to the bowstring, drew the bowstring back, and loosed the arrow. It flew straight through the throat of Antinous. He fell face down on the ground, his legs kicking, and then he was dead. The suitors leapt to their feet. The old beggar jumped onto a table, and Telemachus jumped up beside him. Athene, invisible, reached into the hall. She touched the old beggar's shoulder. Straight away, the hawk-like light came back to the eyes. The broad shoulders, the thick arms, the fine clothes, and the dark curls returned. The suitors ran to the walls to grab the weapons, but all of the weapons were gone. Odysseus and Telemachus loosed arrow after arrow after arrow. The suitors ran to the door. They rattled and shook them, but they were locked from the outside. Again and again, father and son loosed their arrows. When all the arrows were spent, each made his way across the hall, with a sword in one hand and a spear in the other, swinging and slicing like reapers in a field, gathering a grim harvest of death. And that is the end of the chapter. So not only has Odysseus returned, he's not met his wife Penelope. Penelope has not yet recognized him, but he has gone and murdered every single one of the suitors so that she has nobody else left to marry. And he has now also returned into his previous state, back as Odysseus, so he's no longer the old beggar. So what you're going to do for me today, so we're coming to the end of the book now, and I really enjoyed that last chapter. A lot of going on, a lot of drama, murder, okay? So what you're going to do today is you can choose any of the main events from the chapter that we've read. So you might want to choose maybe the test of Odysseus firing his arrow through the axe handles. You might want to do it when him and Telemachus are firing arrows at all of the suitors. Okay, you can choose any from this chapter. So feel free to rewind the video and have a look at which main event you want to choose. And then you can create a freeze frame of this moment, showing the emotion of the characters. How do you really feel Odysseus might be feeling during that scene? Or how do you think the suitors are feeling? You know, they might be scared, they might be drunk, depending on which scene that you're doing. How might Telemachus be feeling? Okay, so I really want you to choose a character, do a freeze frame of him in a particular main event from this chapter. Okay, and you know, if you want to use other props to represent other people, or maybe like a bow and arrow, or use other people to help you. Okay, if you want to, If you can't, don't worry too much. Just stick with props. Props can act as people if you like. That's absolutely fine. But I want you to try and get a freeze frame for me, get a picture of it, and then send it in to me, please. Okay. And then what I want you to do with that picture, okay, I want you to write a caption for your freeze frame. Okay, so a caption is just a little sentence that describes what's happening in the picture. So you get them if you read a newspaper, for example, there'll always be a caption, a little bit of writing below the picture. So that's what I want you to do, is get your picture of you in this freeze frame of any of the main events. I then want you to get a picture of you in that freeze frame. So use somebody else, one of your classmates, or one of your, maybe your parents or siblings, anybody, and then write a caption for your freeze frame. So just a little something that describes in what happened in that scene that you are displaying through your drama. Okay, I hope that will make sense, Year 5. Please feel free to contact me if you're struggling, and I will see you later for our live lesson. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.